Welcome back to the deep dive. You know why you're here, right?
To cut through all the hype and get to the real story in AI, right?
Exactly. I feel like every time I open my newsfeed, there's some new AI thing.
Breakthrough or scare story or...
Yeah, exactly. It's tough to keep up, which is why we decided to take a deep dive into the 2025 AI Index report from Stanford HAI.
It's a great shortcut for anyone who wants a clearer picture of what's really going on.
Without spending hours reading through all those research papers.
Because let's be honest, who's got time for that?
Right. This report pulls together so much data, research findings, expert analysis. It's a one-stop shop for understanding the key trends in AI over the last year.
And that's really what we are focusing on in this deep dive. We want to make sure you walk away with a solid understanding of where AI is making the biggest strides.
How it's starting to show up in our everyday lives.
And also how the world is responding to all these rapid advancements.
Sounds good. Let's get into it. So the report spends a lot of time looking at how AI is actually performing. And to do that, they use these really demanding benchmarks that really push the limits of what these systems can do. One thing that jumped out at me were these brand new benchmarks they introduced in 2023, MMMU, GPQA, and SWE bench. Have you had a chance to look at those yet?
Oh, yeah. And what's really fascinating about these new ones is the rate of improvement we're seeing on them. You know, it's like they set a new bar, a tougher challenge.
And the AI just rises to the occasion.
Yeah, exactly. Like on MMMU, which tests an AI's ability to think across different types of information, like images and text, in a single question. It's on almost 19 percentage point jump in scores in just a year.
Wow. So that's like...
It's a big leap forward in how well these systems can actually understand different types of data together.
So it's not just about processing the information, but actually starting to understand it. That's huge.
Exactly. And it gets even more interesting when you look at GPQA.
Which is focused on complex medical questions, right?
Yeah, and the scores there shot up by almost 39 percentage points.
Really?
Yeah, it's a massive increase in AI's ability to tackle intricate medical reasoning. It really hints at AI playing a much bigger role in healthcare, like maybe assisting with diagnoses.
Wow, that would be incredible.
Potentially even research. Who knows what the future holds? And then there's that other benchmark, SWE bench. That's all about writing and debugging code, right?
Right.
And that one saw the most dramatic improvement of all, a whopping 67.3 percentage point increase. That is a game changer when it comes to software development.
No kidding. That kind of progress suggests that AI could significantly help with or even automate certain programming tasks.
Absolutely. It's incredible to see.
It really is. These aren't just small incremental improvements. These are huge leaps forward in really complex areas. And the report makes it clear that it's not all about hitting these benchmark numbers either.
Oh, yeah. There are a lot of areas that are seeing real progress, stuff that's becoming more visible in our everyday lives. You can just see it.
So what are some of the things that really stand out to you?
Well, just think about how much better AI-generated video is getting. It's becoming harder and harder to tell the difference between what's real and what's AI-created.
I know, right? It's crazy.
And even more surprisingly, they're finding that in controlled settings, some of these language-based AI agents are actually outperforming humans on certain programming tasks. And the kicker is they do it faster, especially under pressure.
So AI is not just getting better, it's getting faster too.
Exactly. It's really becoming more sophisticated and efficient, even surpassing human capabilities in some specific scenarios. It's mind-blowing, really.
So we know AI is getting smarter and more capable in the lab, but how is that actually playing out in our day-to-day lives? One thing the report talks about is this growing integration of AI into all sorts of products and services.
And it's really moving beyond those abstract capabilities into having a tangible impact. Think about it. The FDA approved 223 AI-enabled medical devices last year.
That's a lot.
I know, right? In 2015, they only approved 6. That is a huge jump.
So it went from 6 to over 200 in just a few years.
Wow.
That shows you how quickly this technology is moving.
It's not just about more devices. It's about a growing reliance on AI for really important healthcare applications.
Things like diagnosis, treatment, even patient monitoring.
Right. It has the potential to revolutionize how we approach healthcare. It's really exciting.
It is. And you know what else is becoming more and more part of our daily lives? Those self-driving cars we've all been hearing about.
Absolutely. What seemed like science fiction not too long ago is becoming a reality. Waymo, for example, is now providing over 150,000 driverless rides per week here in the U.S.
And over in China, Baidu's Apollo Go robotaxi service is already operating in multiple cities.
Exactly. It's becoming a more accessible option for many people.
And with all this progress, businesses are definitely taking notice. The report highlights some pretty big investment numbers in AI.
No kidding. Private investment in AI in the U.S. hit $109.1 billion in 2024. To put that in perspective, China invested $9.3 billion and the U.K. invested $4.5 billion.
So the U.S. is really leading the pack when it comes to private investment.
Yeah, by a long shot. And a lot of that investment is going towards generative AI. Those models that can create text, images, and all sorts of content.
Right. I've been seeing so much about that lately.
Global investment in generative AI reached $33.9 billion in 2024, which is almost a 19% increase from the year before. That tells you just how much interest there is in this technology across all sorts of industries, from creative fields to software development.
It's really starting to feel like AI is everywhere, and the report shows that businesses aren't just investing in AI, they're actually using it more and more in their operations.
It's becoming a fundamental part of how businesses operate. In 2024, 78% of organizations reported using AI in some form, compared to 55% in 2023.
That's a pretty big jump.
It is. And it looks like this increased use is having a positive impact on productivity.
That makes sense.
Research also suggests that AI can help bridge skill gaps in the workforce, empower employees and enhance their skills. It's not just about replacing jobs.
That's really important to remember. So we've talked about the progress and the investment, but what about who's actually developing all these advanced AI models? The report gives us a glimpse into the global landscape of AI development.
Yeah, and one of the interesting things here is the changing dynamics between different regions. The report points out that the U.S. is currently leading the way in terms of producing what they call notable AI models. With 40 in 2024, China comes in second with 15, and Europe trails behind with only 3.
So the U.S. is clearly ahead in terms of the sheer quantity of new models.
Right, but the report makes a very important point about the quality of those models. While the U.S. might be developing more models overall,
China's models are quickly catching up in terms of performance.
yeah, that's something to keep an eye on. They're narrowing the gap on key benchmarks like MMLU, which tests language understanding, and Human Eval, which focuses on coding ability. In just 1 year, the performance differences have shrunk considerably.
So while the U.S. might have a lead in quantity,
The quality of Chinese models is rapidly improving.
and of course we can't forget about China's dominance in other crucial areas like the number of AI-related research publications and patents.
Well, absolutely. They continue to be a global powerhouse when it comes to AI research and innovation. They have such a strong foundation, it's likely playing a huge role in their ability to improve their AI models so quickly.
And this isn't just a two-horse race either. The report highlights that AI development is becoming increasingly global.
Definitely. We're seeing more contributions and new models coming from places like the Middle East, Latin America, and Southeast Asia.
It's really encouraging to see a more diverse and global effort in AI development.
It is. It shows that AI is becoming a truly global phenomenon.
Now, with all this rapid advancement in AI, we have to talk about responsible AI. The report looks at the current state of the responsible AI ecosystem, and it seems like it's a mixed bag.
Yeah, it's definitely a work in progress. On the one hand, there are more and more reported incidents related to the use of AI.
Which is concerning.
It is. But at the same time, we're not seeing consistent, standardized evaluations of responsible AI considerations among those big companies that are developing these powerful models.
So there's a bit of a disconnect there.
Yeah, there seems to be a gap between acknowledging the importance of responsible AI and actually putting the right measures in place to make it happen.
It's one thing to talk about it, but it's another to put it into practice.
Absolutely. But the good news is that there's some movement in the right direction when it comes to measuring responsible AI.
How so?
We're seeing some promising new benchmarks like 𝗦𝘁_ภิh𝗳 𝗫𝗫 and FACT-DS that aim to assess things like the factuality and safety of AI models in a more rigorous way. That's a good sign.
It is, and it seems like governments around the world are starting to take notice of the need for more oversight in AI.
Oh, definitely. There's a real sense of urgency, and they are taking more concrete steps. Globally, we saw a big increase in cooperation on AI governance in 2024, with organizations like the OECD, the EU, the UN, and the African Union all stepping up.
That's encouraging to hear.
And they're really emphasizing those core principles of responsible AI. like transparency and trustworthiness. It's a good sign that there's a global recognition of the need for some level of oversight and ethical considerations as AI keeps developing.
Speaking of global perspectives, the report looks at how people around the world feel about AI, and there are some really interesting regional differences in attitudes.
Oh yeah, public opinion on the benefits and risks of AI varies quite a lot from country to country.
For example,
Well, in places like China, Indonesia, and Thailand, there's a lot of optimism about AI. Over 75% of people there believe that AI products and services will ultimately do more good than harm.
that's a really high level of trust in the technology.
It is. But then you look at countries like Canada, the US, and the Netherlands, and the level of optimism is much lower. Only about 40% or less of people there have a positive view of AI's potential.
That's a pretty big gap.
It is, and it probably reflects a lot of different things. Cultural factors, how much people understand about AI, and maybe different levels of trust in institutions.
Makes sense. But even with these differences, the report points out an interesting trend. Some of those countries that were previously more skeptical about AI are actually becoming more optimistic.
Yeah, it looks like attitudes are shifting. Since 2022, countries like Germany, France, Canada, Great Britain, even the US, have all seen an increase in the number of people who see AI in a more positive light.
That's interesting. Why do you think that is?
It could be that people are becoming more familiar with AI in their everyday lives, or maybe they're starting to understand its potential benefits better.
It could be. It'll be interesting to see if that trend continues. So let's talk about accessibility. One of the biggest factors influencing how widely AI is adopted and how much impact it has is how accessible the technology is. The report dives into some important trends in the efficiency, affordability, and just the overall accessibility of AI.
Yeah, this is really important for making sure AI doesn't just benefit a select few.
We need to make sure it's available to everyone.
Exactly. And the good news is that the cost of using advanced AI capabilities is coming down significantly. The report mentions that the cost of using a model like GPT 3.5 dropped by an incredible 280-fold between November 2022 and October 2024.
Wow, 280-fold. That's insane.
I know, right? It's largely because we're seeing the development of smaller, more efficient AI models that don't need as much computing power to run.
So it's becoming much more feasible for smaller businesses, researchers, and individuals to use these sophisticated AI models.
Exactly. And it's not just the cost of using the models that's going down. The hardware needed for AI is also becoming more affordable, dropping by about 30% each year, and the energy efficiency of AI is improving by about 40% annually. All of this together makes AI more sustainable and more accessible.
That's really encouraging. And it's not just about the cost of using AI, it's also about access to the models themselves.
Well, yeah, the rise of open-weight models is making a huge difference here. These are models where the code and all the inner workings are made public. Anyone can use them, study them, and adapt them.
That's a game changer. It opens up AI development to a much wider community.
It does. And the best part is that the performance gap between these open models and those closed-source ones that are kept secret is closing rapidly. On some benchmarks, the difference in performance went from about 8% to just 1.7% in a year.
That's incredible. It really levels the playing field for a lot of innovators. So it's pretty clear that governments around the world are paying close attention to all of this, and the report points to an increase in both regulation and investment in AI.
Oh yeah, we're seeing a real shift in how governments are approaching AI. In the US, federal agencies introduced 59 new AI-related regulations in 2024. That's more than double what we saw the year before.
And it seems like that trend is global.
Absolutely. Looking at 75 countries, the report found that mentions of AI in legislative documents increased by over 21% since 2023. And that's actually a 9-fold increase since 2016. It's pretty clear that governments are waking up to the implications of AI and are starting to take action.
And it's not just about regulations. There's also a lot of government funding going towards AI initiatives.
Oh yeah, governments are putting their money where their mouth is. Canada has pledged $2.4 billion. China has launched a massive $47.5 billion semiconductor fund that will have a huge impact on AI hardware. France is investing 109 billion euros. India has pledged $1.25 billion, and Saudi Arabia's Project Transcendence includes a whopping $100 billion earmarked for technology, with AI being a major focus. These are big investments, showing just how strategic AI is becoming globally.
And speaking of the future, it's clear that education will play a big part in preparing people for a world shaped by AI. The report looks at how AI and computer science education is expanding.
It's great to see that more and more countries are recognizing the importance of this. 2/3 of countries now offer or are planning to offer computer science education for K-12 students, which is double the number back in 2019.
That's a big step in the right direction.
It is, and it looks like regions like Africa and Latin America are leading the charge in increasing access to this crucial education.
And in the U.S.?
The number of bachelor's degrees awarded in computing fields has gone up by 22% over the past decade. That's a good sign that more young people are interested in careers that involve AI and computer science.
It sounds like we're heading in the right direction, but the report does highlight that there are still some big disparities in access and preparedness when it comes to AI education.
Yeah, that's a real concern. While progress is being made, the quality of computer science education still varies a lot from place to place. In some African countries, basic things like access to reliable electricity can make it tough to implement these programs.
I can see how that would be a huge obstacle.
And even in the U.S., while most K-12 computer science teachers believe AI should be taught, less than half of them feel ready to teach it effectively. So there's a need for more support and training for teachers to keep up with this rapidly changing field.
For sure. Now, shifting gears a little bit, the report also takes a look at who's leading the charge in developing those cutting-edge AI models. It seems like the industry is playing a more and more dominant role.
Yeah, it looks like industry is really taking the lead. In 2024, almost 90% of the notable AI models came from industry sources, up from around 60% just the year before.
So most of the innovation in AI is happening within private companies now.
It seems that way. But academia still has a really important role to play. They're still the top source of highly cited AI research.
So they're still pushing the boundaries of our theoretical understanding.
Exactly. They're laying the groundwork for those future breakthroughs.
The report also talks about the sheer scale of these AI models and how it's growing at an incredible rate. It's mind-boggling, really.
It is. The amount of computing power being used to train these models is doubling every 5 months. The size of the data sets is doubling every 8 months, and the power consumption doubles every year. It takes a ton of resources to build these increasingly large and complex AI systems.
It's insane. But here's an interesting point. Even though the scale and complexity of these models are increasing so rapidly, the performance differences between the top-performing models and those that are ranked just a little bit lower are actually getting smaller.
You're right. It seems like the gap is closing. The report found that the score difference between the top model and the 10th ranked model decreased from 11.9% to just 5.4% in 1 year. And the two top models are now just 0.7% apart.
Yeah.
It's getting really tight at the top.
That's really fascinating. It suggests that we might be reaching a point where bigger breakthroughs will require totally new approaches to AI, not just making existing models even bigger.
Yeah, that's a great point. We might be approaching the limits of what we can achieve with current techniques.
The report also highlights how AI's impact on science is being recognized. We're seeing it in some of the most prestigious scientific awards.
Definitely. In 2023, 2 Nobel Prizes were awarded to work that ultimately led to advancements in deep learning.
That's huge.
It is. One was in physics, and the other was in chemistry for its application to solving the protein folding problem. And the Turing Award, which is like the Nobel Prize of Computing, honored those incredible contributions to reinforcement learning, which is another core area of AI. It's amazing to see AI being celebrated at this level.
It really shows just how transformative AI is becoming across all sorts of scientific fields.
It does. But even with all these incredible advancements, the report does acknowledge that AI still faces some fundamental challenges, particularly in complex reasoning.
So what's the problem there?
Well, it seems like current AI is really good at pattern recognition and making predictions based on the huge amounts of data it's trained on. But the kind of abstract reasoning that we humans are good at, AI still struggles with that.
Give me an example.
Sure. Like AI models can do really well on certain structured tasks, like solving those really hard International Mathematical Olympiad problems. But when you give them more open-ended tasks that require complex reasoning, they don't do as well. Well, they've got this benchmark called PlanBench that tests AI's planning and reasoning abilities. And even when there's a clear, logical solution, AI often fails to find it consistently.
So it's not quite there yet when it comes to those more nuanced real-world problems.
Exactly.
So there you have it, folks. A pretty comprehensive look at the 2025 AI Index Report. I know we covered a lot, so let's recap those key takeaways.
Let's do it.
Okay, so first up, we saw some huge leaps in AI performance, particularly on those challenging benchmarks.
Right.
We talked about how AI is becoming increasingly integrated into our daily lives, from medical devices to self-driving cars.
and how businesses are investing heavily in AI.
Right, and using it more and more in their operations, leading to productivity gains.
We also looked at the global AI landscape and how the U.S. is currently leading in the number of advanced models being developed.
But China's catching up quickly in terms of quality.
Exactly. And we can't forget those ongoing efforts to ensure responsible AI. It's a work in progress. But we are seeing some promising developments in terms of new benchmarks and increased government involvement.
That's true. And we can't forget about those global differences in attitudes towards AI, with some countries much more optimistic than others.
And even in countries that have been more skeptical, optimism seems to be growing.
Right. We also talked about how the increasing affordability and accessibility of AI are really crucial for making sure this technology benefits everyone.
Absolutely. And how open weight models are helping to level the playing field in AI development.
And of course, this increasing government investments in AI and the expansion of AI and computer science education.
We also talked about how industry is taking the lead in model development, but academia is still crucial for driving the fundamental research.
Right. We saw that although the scale of AI models is growing at an amazing pace, the performance differences between the top models are actually shrinking.
And we talked about how the impact of AI is being recognized through those prestigious scientific awards, highlighting its growing importance.
But we also need to remember that AI still has a way to go in terms of complex reasoning.
Totally. That remains a key challenge for the future.
So there you have it. The 2025 AI Index Report gives us a really fascinating snapshot of this rapidly evolving field.
It does. It's a must-read for anyone who wants to keep up with what's happening in the world of AI.
And on that note, here's something for everyone to think about. Given all these trends we've been talking about, the rapid progress, the global competition, the ethical challenges, and the potential impact of AI, what does this mean for the future of technology and our society? How will AI shape our world in the years to come? That's definitely something worth pondering. Thanks for joining us for this deep dive. We'll catch you next time.